Hello and welcome everyone to Tatler Talks in partnership with HSBC Premier. I'm Shida Mahadi from Tatler Malaysia. And today we have an amazing panel on preparing the education of tomorrow, where we'll be discussing the challenges that parents experience while putting their children through school, with the aim of helping parents navigate their way to quality education for their children. Additionally, we've also earlier reached out to Tatler Malaysia's audience via Instagram to gather their thoughts on these topics. And we've included some of their questions in our lineup, so you'll be getting feedback from our panel firsthand. Joining us for this edition of Tatler Talks is Renee Bullock-Cann, Country Head of Wealth and Personal Banking at HSBC Malaysia. Tamara Lim, founder of PrepWorks. Mariam Teh, MD of Geta Sindran Berhad and mother of 3 boys, as well as James Tee, Vice President of Investment at Seraya Capital and father of 2 girls. So I'm sure everyone's raring to go, so let's get started. First of all, we'd like to know from our fellow parents, Mariam and James, how important is your children's academic success to you and why? So James, let's get the ball rolling with you.
It's great to be able to share some of my experiences here as the only father here at this panel for now. As a father of 2 girls, aged 13 and 15 years old, I've tried to parent with a very balanced approach. Academic performance is one pillar, one out of many, I might add, that in my opinion anyway, supports their foundation for their future success. To me, it is not as important today compared to the measures used during my time or even our parents' time growing up. For example, back then it was very much about rote learning, but today creativity and lateral thinking is more useful in today's innovation-driven environment than rote learning.
Cool. All right. And Mariam, what are your thoughts on this?
First and foremost, thank you for inviting me for this talk and sharing a little bit from my side as a mother. Well, education and academic success is important, like James said, but not like during my time or my parents' times as well. I would totally agree on that. It's important, but it's definitely not the most important factor for my children. Especially now we've learned the last 1.5 years with this pandemic ongoing, especially, you see a lot more perspectives of how the well-being of a child as a whole is more important. The education system, academic success, yes, and it's also very subjective to every single parent there. Different parents will have different perspective on what success is academically for a child. And also we have to look at the child's talents and skills as well. So this is actually, to me, a very subjective question, but definitely not the most important factor.
I'm quite glad to see both of our parents feel that, the other aspects of a child's life play as much role as academic success. And Tamara, you're a parent as well, right? Of 3 boys, I just found out. What are your thoughts on this matter?
Yeah, so I have 1 girl and 2 little boys, ages 10, 7, and 4. I think that, honestly, I have actually high expectations of my children. I don't really want to admit that, but I do, because I set a high bar for myself just for my character, or actually more like my mom set the bar for me when I was younger. I do want them to have the same pride in striving hard for something and, doing well in it. But I also know from my business and from what I do that there is a flip side in imposing your own dreams and expectations on your child. There's negative impacts of self-esteem, stress, burnout, not doing what you really want in the end, and then, going through the slog for maybe 10 years, giving it a chance, but then realizing this is not what you want to do. Maybe because, and it's completely understandable that, parents' expectations or maybe relatives have advised them accordingly. So I'm I'm conscious I can only support my kids within reaching distance of the top, but I believe that they themselves have to be the one to actually reach out and when the time comes for it, to grab it. But it's completely their choice.
Cool. Renee, you mentioned that you have a 14-year-old daughter earlier. I believe her name is Ruby. What are your thoughts on education and its role in today's world?
Yeah, I like what everyone has said so far on the panel, all kind of different versions of what I think is where we are today, given an evolving landscape on education. I think the world has changed fast. I reflect back on being a little girl. My father was working full time, but also studying for his master's degree in engineering. And my parents had big expectations for me. So I think education is critical. I think that it has changed though, right? It was pretty unique for my parents to have master's degrees at the time. And now I think you need a university degree if you're looking for a role, say, in a financial institution. So how you go through your educational experience and learn, yes, the foundations of, say, mathematics and literature and sciences. I think you also learn how to navigate, how to create strategies. You learn the critical thinking skills that were mentioned earlier, and I think that's what's really going to help you as an adult. I think that's our goal as parents, really, is to raise healthy and productive adults. And I think education exposes children and adolescents to new experiences and what's out there on the horizon, and gives them the opportunity to stretch for their goals.
Nice. That's a really nice thought there. Yep. All right, let's talk about goals. Do you set goals for your children's academic achievements? Do you plan it together with them? And how do you help them to achieve the goals that you've set for them? James, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, actually, of all the questions, I probably like this one the best. Because for the past few years since I think 2014 or 15, right? Every first day of the new year, I actually will sit down with my kids together with my wife Celeste, and we will actually ask the kids, have a pen and paper ready and answer these 4 following questions. Number 1, what were the memories that I'm most grateful for last year? Number 2, what are the top 3 things that I achieved last year, and why? And what are the top 3 things I want to achieve this year, and why? And the last one is, what do I want to be when I grow up? And how will my answers for questions number 3 help this ambition? Now, I think this process allows them to set up their own goals. So Celeste and I merely guide them without changing their minds. That's not easy. For example, at one point, my oldest wanted to serve in the New Zealand Army, because she was born there. And we tried to discourage her, thinking, it was just the result of too much Netflix. But after a few years of the same answer, we thought, okay, there could be something here. It may seem like an immature ambition, but I've met retired service people that would make me proud to have my daughter serve. And then also some of these retired, servicemen and women join the private sector with a very different set of skills and discipline.
And when did you start doing this with your kids? How young were they when you started doing this exercise? Because I think it's an amazing exercise.
Well, 2014, 15, they're about 13 now. So as soon as they could write in very bad writing, I just got it done. And I have it all on record, by the way. It's all on my table here.
Wow.
So I have it here, and I actually bring it up with them every year. So I said, this is what you wrote last year, this is what you wrote the previous year, and I actually track that. And I think it's a good family exercise to kind of celebrate the new year, especially for question number 1, which is what was I grateful for last year? So gratitude is something that I always want them to appreciate and to count their blessings. So.
Yeah, I think this is a really fascinating exercise, and it teaches the kids so many things, like you say, gratitude, so accountability, and sticking to your goals and making sure you achieve them. So I think this is really amazing, James. I think this is the first time I've heard it. And Mariam, how about you?
I think it's more like a long-term goal. I don't write it in pen and paper, but I have conversations, very friendly conversations with my children, my 3 boys. Maybe not so much with the youngest at the moment, but the other two, especially my eldest is already 16. Second, it's 12 going 13. So for a few years now, we have very frank conversations, like what they want to be, what they aspire to be, what they prefer to take up for tertiary education. But to me, tertiary education is a must, but it's just that how they want to do it, what they want to pursue, the subjects they want to go on with in uni, and when they want to do it, I totally leave it up to them. But Iwan and I are on the same page where we always have to keep on track with them, what they want to do and where they're going now with their goals and their ambition. And we'll support and advise when necessary, according to the situation or the time.
So in our IG stories, we asked our audience what are their biggest concern when it comes to their children's education. And we received feedback that their main concerns are the quality and the breadth of education, the cost, safety during the pandemic, and how it would really prepare our children for the real world. So do you guys share the same concern? And if yes, which one? And have you taken any steps to address those concerns? James?
Yeah, I think some of those points I do share them, especially numbers 3 and 4, and it literally kept me awake. Nowadays, because the original plan was for me to send my kids abroad, back to New Zealand to study, right? But because they also had a recent case of Delta and the whole country is on lockdown now, which meant that we couldn't go back. Even back a couple of months ago before they had Delta, because what they've done is they've limited the number of returnees flying in. So we have a small segment of our generation who will not be able to be benchmarked according to pre-COVID educational standards during the pandemic. I mean, for example, Kayla, my youngest, was supposed to sit for a UPSR last year, but the MOE decided not to hold it. So how would this affect her CV growing up, right? Versus kids who actually did have their UPSR results. And so those are things which just creates problems for me as a parent.
I see. Yeah, and I think those concerns are very real. I mean, I think we've read quite a few articles which talk about these people who had previously significant milestones in their education life, like kids who are taking their O-levels or UPSR, like you say in SPM. And within this past 2 years, we kind of had to put their education on pause and how it would affect them. I think that's a very real and a very and a concern amongst many of our parents. Mariam, how about you? Do you share the same concerns? Or is there anything else?
Yeah.
Yes,
for concern 1 and 2 especially, when right before my eldest son went to primary school, we already done a comparison between and research a little bit about the education system, the syllabus that we want to put our eldest in. Yeah, because the gap between the first and the second is about 4 years, right? So we had ample time. And during that time, to send a child, for a Malaysian to send a child to international schools, there was still a quota system. That's a different queue. Yeah, for foreigners to go to enter and study at an international school. And also there's a quota for Malaysians. So we did a little bit of research on that, the wait list at the schools that we've shortlisted. And to be fair, the person who's going to be studying in the schools that Iwan, my husband, and I have chosen is actually my elder son and my children, subsequent children, right? Mm. So the 2 schools that we've chosen, we actually brought him to have a look, let him have a feel, have a trial class. And nice. Then when he was called up for interview, then we actually asked him if he wanted to go to the schools that he already got a placement. Yeah, a placement at.
Nice.
Yeah. So cost, in terms of the cost, in terms of the facilities, the syllabus, everything, we've done that. And then it was an easier flow for number 2 and number 3.
because you've got a template of sorts to follow.
Yeah. In a way, my eldest was like the one testing and trying, so everything went well. So it was an easier flow for number 2 and number 3. Concern 3 now, with the pandemic ongoing, it's very current. Everyone, I think, is learning about the SOP and how to live with it. So before this current lockdown, actually, where they limit children below the age of 12 not to go to supermarkets or allowed out, right? Last year itself, I was already taking my children out one by one, not all 3 together, to see how they behave when they are at the supermarket, whether they are adhering to what I've taught them or advised them to do and not to do, the do's and don'ts when they're out and when they're eating out. Because my friends were asking me, why are you allowing them out? There are ongoing cases. Aren't you worried or aren't you afraid? I said, I have to let them out and see how they're behaving and how they're understanding the situation, because they're going to go back to school eventually, right? And at least they will have some preparations for what to do and not to do and how they'll mingle and social interact when they're back in school. So it's still an ongoing process to me for this pandemic concern.
It's a very important and, if I may say so, a very courageous step that you've taken, because I think instinctively as parents, what we want to do is we just want to shield them from, whatever possible dangers there are out there. Tamara, you're the expert, I guess, when it comes to planning for education. So do you share the same concerns, and how do you overcome these concerns?
As there is more and more choice now on school options in Malaysia, before, maybe about 30 years ago, there weren't this many international schools, and now there are about, I think, their licenses, 88 given out but not built yet. So that's quite a lot. So compared to my time, when I was in school, my parents actually sent me abroad to the UK at 13 to boarding schools, just so I could get the highest quality education. And, but then now actually they've got so many more options. So I think, in fact, boarding schools are looking to come over here, like Epson and like Charterhouse. So I believe that the standard is getting higher in Malaysia. When it comes to the breadth, however, the breadth of education, I think I've been hoping to address this with my company PrepWorks, because there are certain areas that are less focused and less offered, I suppose, compared to overseas, because they aren't really cultivated enough in our culture and our country. So areas like philosophy, like politics, psychology, history, literature, generally humanities. STEM has always been a safe bet because, your previous generations are more familiar with this path. But because, you could also branch into a whole range of stable jobs, I would say. But arts and humanities, like philosophy in the sense of us questioning our own thinking, literature, politics in the sense of exposing ourselves to other systems. How have they done it? Have they done it better? Knowledge of current affairs, what's going on in the world, the ability to communicate in writing and speaking and critically thinking, but not just in essay format, on the spot, verbally, So from my past 5 years doing this, I've seen this area less developed than the rest. And so I think it's generally holding us back from, attaining our sort of goals, our own personal goals. Safety. So safety is a concern. Obviously now is a really big concern, and it's a Pandora box of an issue. It is a big toss-up between the long-term effects from stalling education, and I think we don't actually grasp the size of this problem, but it might hit us in the future. So the long-term effect of stalling education and catching the virus, which we're also not sure whether it's just catching the flu or we'll just end up, in hospital, and then, before we know it, we put our kids in huge danger. So the problem right now is we don't really know the magnitude of each. So personally, I've mulled over this for a very long time. I've pulled my kids out of their regular online schooling because it was simply one-way and one-way conversations. And I felt, well, for me as an educator, I think I rather not just tick the box and attend. I'd rather them spend the time more usefully. So I homeschooled my kids to the point of insanity, as I'm sure a lot of parents have felt. I've also gone through every option in the book to save their education and decide on, but I did something drastic about it. So I took the plunge and I set up an online school called PrepWorks Academy, with the help of one of my tutors, also an educator and certified coach. Her name's Nazia. It's 100% online, interactive, engaging. It encourages the kids to connect socially and emotionally, and just keep their education going to the bare minimum. That's what Khan Academy's philosophy was as well. You just keep the bare minimum going because you can't fit an 8-hour schedule online. You have to minimize it because now it involves screen time. So just covering English, math, science, and a language like Mandarin and Bahasa. And I do feel it's not as ideal as physical school, but I've had a hand in training my staff. I've attended like a Harvard graduate school education course online so that I could roll out the teaching methods to them. And we have like a weekly training. I see my own children in it, and they're having fun and they're learning. And that's, I think, all I can ask for right now. And we have a body of about over 40 students now after a year and a half. So my own personal goal of getting them back into school is not really as critical as some other parents, but the bonus is they've actually covered pretty much most of the UK curriculum for the whole of last year in their respective years. On a wider scale, most Western countries have decided to open up school, like the big nations of UK and US. And there's a lot of commotion from the parents, right? Among primary school pupils, though, on the BBC News, it says that there is a limited spread of the virus at that age, so primary school age. And the older teens are the ones which have a similar pattern to catching the virus as the adults. So within the schools, there is exactly the same percentage of infection as the other general areas. It is not a lot more, than, if you were to take the same sample in another like workplace or anything. So the school isn't really like the place where everyone's really catching it. So I suppose there is research done behind this decision that big nations like UK and US have, decided on opening schools. Therefore, and there's also a reason why vaccine producers have worked their vaccine in this order in terms of priority. So there's the target age for various vaccines, going from the elderly all the way down. But I do think correct measures like daily testing, ventilation in the classrooms, HEPA filters in the classrooms, all staff being double vaccinated, families of kids being vaccinated and teens vaccinated, families will be vaccinated. So it won't feel like we're sending our children necessarily into great danger. We're doing the best that we can and, weighing out all the information on both sides. I think we can be at peace with that. I mean, there's always risks every way. It's just a matter of how much risk. Even a vaccination is not completely eliminating your risk. Sometimes I've heard many stories, even staying at home is not completely eliminating your risk. So
yeah, I guess it's true. The thing also is that, like you said, the situation evolves every day and something new will be thrown into the works, and we are all constantly adapting and everything is very fluid. So I can see that you've given a lot of thought into like the concerns, and Renee, if you would like to share with us, what are your thoughts on what the concerns of parents are with regards to education today?
Yeah, this is something we're talking about within my circle of friends and family, both here and abroad. I think, top of mind often is kind of the social issues and the development. So going to school is important academically, but it also, as I was saying earlier, helps kids navigate the world as adults. That's where you kind of first learn how to manage conflict or how to how do come up with a strategy in order to deal with a challenge that might be in your way? And I think that's a gap, because right now, they're lacking interaction with the outside world. Adapting to new ways of learning. I myself sometimes struggle with Zoom all day. And, I think even as adults, a lot of us, you're just smiling, yes. So I look at my 14-year-old and I think, really, am I expecting something completely different from her? I mean, how do we adapt? And how do we make sure that it still is interactive and fun? And, I have some sympathy for teachers in particular, trying to lead through that, depending upon the ages. Finding the right schools, both, in Malaysia, and maybe looking for schools that are private or not, but also then considering, is education outside of Malaysia the right thing? These are things families have to think through, and it can go back and forth a bit. Worries about finances, right? So having to pay for school, and if we want our children to go off to university and maybe get a master's degree or beyond, that takes a significant amount of investment. Making sure that we're prepared with healthcare, so we don't become a burden on our kids at some point, and just make sure that right now well-being is so important. With a lot on Zoom, with screen time becoming more of a challenge because going outside and doing activities are limited. It's a bit tough. And within that, I also think working from home. So now I think I work where I live. It's very interesting. A lot of us are finding, the blend in some ways. Maybe we're overproductive, even more productive than we ever imagined we could be, because, our laptops are right here. It's all right here at our fingertips. Yeah. And, I know a lot of people even are delaying taking some of their holiday leave because they're just staying home. So you might as well work and keep yourself occupied. But I think from a mental health perspective, it is good to have a break. So these are the things that we're talking about all the time, with regards to our kids and ourselves, right? It's all kind of one thing. In order to be the best parent, you need to be healthy.
Yep. Like Renee said, there are a few challenges that as a parent she shared with us. How about James and Mariam? Has the pandemic affected the academic performance of your kids and their way of learning? And what are some of the challenges that you have faced during this period?
Yeah, I was going to answer that one by saying that online schooling has been ineffective for both children, for both my children. But Tamara, I might need to get your contacts later on this online academy that you set up. It's kind of changed my mind a little bit because, So to be very, very honest, I also, Renee, what you said about feeling sorry for the teachers, I definitely share the sentiments, and I feel sorry for the teachers who have tried so hard to work within the limitations of the internet. And it's not their fault, because I walk into the room where my kids are supposed to be attending class, and I see them slouching and plugged into other apps while the teacher is speaking. Now, at the same time, we've had over since March, April last year, lockdown, right? I can't scold or monitor them because A, I have to work from home, and that means actual work, so I can't be, being the police all the time at home, right? Mm-hmm. And B, I'm worried that being difficult and strict during this whole lockdown with my kids at home will affect them emotionally and mentally. So I share on everyone's sentiment here. The latter, I guess, is a major concern. I think mentally it's really affected them. Some kids may take it on better than others. Some really need that social outdoor interaction with their friends. And I worry that, that might lead to future problems growing up.
All right. Mariam, how about you?
Well, I have to say that maybe for my situation, it's just as good as it gets, because definitely online school has shorter hours, because like Tamara mentioned, the screen time we have to control, because you can't expect a child, even for me, I cannot be doing meetings after meetings the whole day. I need to take a break. So what the school has done is actually do one subject, and then they have like 30 minutes to 1 hour break, and then they come back again. So within that 30 minutes to 1 hour break, sometimes they will have like a worksheet to do, or some work to prepare, and then you'll come back for another hour. Definitely, I would say the quality and whatever they are receiving now and learning will be less than physical school. And honestly, my youngest has actually come up to me like a few times. When can we go back to school? He wants to go back. It's actually the whole environment that he enjoys in school, So when in terms of what they are learning, from what I have been monitoring and going through with them in between meetings and work, I think they are okay, but there's still a worry of how they're going to complete the whole year, the whole syllabus with this cut short hours with online school, because you are there the whole day. Although you don't learn the whole day in school, there's break, there's PE, there's lunch. It's different because the human touch, the actual learning face to face is not there, and maybe your lab work.
Yep.
So my worry is now they are okay. It's just that when the catch up, like for my son who's in year 8 now, number 2, right? So he's okay. He's as good as he can get off online school. But when he comes back to physical school, then I think by then we'll see how much they have actually lost out in this 1.5 years of not going to school.
The other thing that I wanted to ask you, James, is also we've talked a lot about education and the different aspects of education as well as cost. I think that's been brought up quite a bit. So with your experience in finance, did it help to steer your financial decisions when it comes to planning for your children's education?
Yes and no. I guess irrespective of my professional career, I think most parents will plan for their kids, as to the best of their ability, right? So having said that, my own personal choice for my kids, and I have to credit my parents for deciding to send me to New Zealand at a very young age, where I lived for many years and that's where they were born. Thus, I think that easily gives them the option to study there. So from a cost perspective, it is very marginal, like what Tamara said in Australia and New Zealand as well. The level and the quality of education there, even at a public school level, is very high. Right? It's almost better, if not equal, to a lot of the private schools here. So I don't have to stress that much, and I just have to be grateful for that. But in terms of what they want to do after that, whether they want to go post-grad and whatnot, yes. So I do have to set an amount aside through investments or alternative asset classes. But Renee can maybe give a better perspective on these things later on.
Sure. And Mariam, you've got 3 boys going through school now, all of them at different stages. What has been the main financial challenge for you would say?
It's been good. I would say, Alhamdulillah, everything is on the roll with a good plan in hand. So we just see if it's what they want to do and what we have planned and what we have saved, it's good enough for them from now.
Yeah. Well, it's good to know that as parents, both of you guys have planned ahead for your children's education, albeit in very different ways. Tamara, what about you? When discussing education with your friends or parents who have children about the same age as yours, what do you find to be their main challenge?
Well, I guess to answer your question in short, for kids, my kids' age would be online learning, getting them to sit still in front of the computer for hours. So it is a struggle, especially if you have to work and look after your kids at the same time, and not at the expense of the parent-child relationship. So I think, I guess that's really the main challenge for families with kids my age. But I do also get a lot of families with kids slightly older, because of the nature of my job. So I find the main challenge there I see is that students and parents are quite uncertain about their future, figuring out a clear pathway, figuring out what their goals are, what they need to do to get there, It's clouded by too much uncertainty and in some ways, too many options. So they tend to follow what their successful friends have done, but they don't realize that actually everyone is unique. And I guess it might go against maybe something that what Mariam mentioned earlier, but I treat every child differently because even if it worked for the previous one, I've seen families where the second and the third one may not necessarily have the same characteristics as the first. So in that sense, it's almost not in a way a repeat order. It has to be different for every child depending on their interests and their strengths. So it's the idea there is just that every individual they have different characters, and the key is to leverage on that uniqueness of every child. And therefore I can't even use my own experience to help them. I have to kind of do a research all over again for each child. But this is the beauty of what I do also, which is helping students reflect on this and figure out the best fit degrees, their education goals, the university destinations, the best fit environment to thrive, not just survive, right? Not just get a stable career, but in my generation, a lot of my friends went into accounting and finance, and then I think they've kind of left that. So now we're like sort of 15 years in the workplace, and we've sort of left that to follow our own passions. So it can be very different. Myself as well, I'm an engineer, but I've left that and become someone in the education sector. So I really believe that if there's lots of deep thought and thinking from the upfront, you can actually have a clearer goal. So I find that's important. I also find that the fact that online learning is becoming difficult for the sciences, it's also discouraging a lot of the teens from thinking, oh, I used to be really good at biology or maths, and all of a sudden, because online learning has come into place, and it's really actually, if you've ever kind of sat in a physics lesson, it's actually very tough to teach physics online compared to if you were to teach geography or humanities or any other essay sort of writing subject. So it's kind of put a lot of teens off science, which is a bit scary for the fact that it's more confidence. They're losing their own confidence in wanting to pursue a science or STEM career. So I think that's also something just to look out for. There's some sort of COVID effect to how you view your future. Probably a really big one. Yeah.
I still have to ask this question because it's a question that gets asked. It's quite a popular question amongst parents, right? And regardless of how maybe now we think a little differently, but the popular question is always, what is the current trend in education today, Tamara? Which field of study specifically should parents keep a lookout for?
Okay. Well, a trend in the applications to certain degrees have been, just as a fact, is data science, computer science, and also biomedical and bioengineering. I think, due to COVID and also due to the whole remote working and, which are the industries that are thriving and maybe which aren't doing quite so well. So I don't know whether you should guide your child though towards these trending fields of study is not actually something I'm behind, because I believe it is up to the individual based on their strengths and passions. Really, that determines their field. Again, like I mentioned before, like everyone went into banking at one point. I understand this is a HSBC talk, but at the same time, it may not be your real true interest. Yeah. So, but if you were to ask me, but no, please HSBC continue to recruit all those that are currently, in their interests are in banking. So at least that they're in it for the long haul. So it would be more on the side of I would say more on the side of transferable skills that you want to get out of a degree. I believe adaptability and being able to cope with situations you're not used to. And I suppose a little bit of creativity and critical thinking comes into that. So that's a little more kind of, I know, wishy-washy, but I also believe that you can get this from most globally recognized in terms of their standard universities, the top universities in the world. So if you have a shot at it, I think it makes a big difference going to one where, they do teach you these sorts of these sorts of transferable skills, because it doesn't really matter what the landscape is in the future, whatever jobs are available. Like right now, there's a job called user experience manager, which I don't think anyone would have come across or even thought of maybe 20 years ago. So I guess just to be prepared, transferable skills, and I believe world recognized institutions will bring that and will give that to your child.
In our IG polls, we ask parents if they'll be sending their children for college or university locally or abroad. 87% answered abroad. What about you, Mariam? Do you have any plans to send your kids abroad for their education?
Yes. Actually, for my eldest, I wanted to send him over for year 9 boarding school overseas. But I was already in talks with a consultant, and what are the procedures like, how do we go about it, and then when should we visit the schools. He found out and he wasn't very happy.
Oh,
yeah, he found out he wasn't very happy, and then he came to my room one day, and he was having not a very happy face, and then he was quite sad, and he came by and said, "Mommy, I think when I'm ready to go, I will go, but it's just not now. I hope that you can see why. I'm doing well in school, just not ready. I know your effort I know what you're doing is for my future and is good for me, but I'm just not ready." So I had a talk with my husband. I think it's fair. He's a very mature boy and he knows what he wants. And for him to have actually opened up, I was very glad that we had this open talk, So if it's not ready, we figured better not push him. But he wants to go overseas. It's just that not now,
Matter of when,
So,
yeah. And Tamara, what is your advice for parents who want to send their kids abroad for studies at this time, or also parents who are now rethinking their decision to send their kids abroad? Like, have you got anything to share with them?
For parents sending the children abroad right now or thinking about it, I know that a lot of, say, for sixth form colleges, they've taken all the measures to ensure that closed environment. And I mean, even the boarding schools here, they've taken measures to enclose that environment so that it's pretty much controlled and, physical learning can take place. And it's probably safer than a lot of the day schools because, it's not such a consistent flow of people going in and out all the time. So, and of course, everything's just generally more controlled. So I feel like this is kind of a good time actually to think about your kids going to sixth form college abroad. I know it's a bit scary to kind of, if anything happens to them, how are you going to fix it? It's also quite scary in that sense. But at the same time, there is a lot of reassurance and the SOPs that they adhere to is of another level. So I feel that that's an okay decision right now, and you don't have to live with them online learning here, and it would be okay to actually send them abroad in that kind of contained and closed environment.
And what are some of the things that the parents should take into consideration when considering sending their kids abroad?
Well, if we're talking about school or university, I suppose, yes, location is sort of important. I think more important for university than it is for school, because schools, especially boarding schools, if you're not going to be there and seeing them every day, it's pretty much contained. So whether you're in the middle of Shropshire or you're right outside London, if you're not allowed out, it doesn't really make much of a difference. But for university, I think it makes a big difference whether you're in a city university, right in the heart of, the bustling sort of workplace where you might bump into people who are not from the university, or you're in a campus university outside, which gives you a little bit more, it's sort of a student feel, so you can meet your friends down the road. Safety is not as much of an issue, but then when it comes to the city, it's a little bit more like, it's harder to meet up with your friends. You have to go through many other people and many other kind of scenarios before you actually get to a meeting point and all that. So I feel like it's a very different experience. So I've had families who have specifically asked for London and families who specifically asked not for London. London. So that's one kind of example. The other thing is whether they want to go for an A-level or IB program, because A-levels, it's quite in depth, and it's and I know I'm excluding a lot more other curriculum here because I know there's Canada and there's Australia and New Zealand, but I'll just kind of talk about the ones I'm familiar with, which is either A-level or IB. IB is a bit more internationally recognized. So if you're looking at a more kind of dual or triple country strategy, so like going for UK and US, or even Australia for university all at the same time, then IB would be more recognized. But if it's for A-levels, it's for just the UK, then A-levels normally has kind of the strength of the curriculum in terms of depth. And also they have, something a lot of you I'm sure are familiar with, which is further maths A-level, which is kind of another gold standard of maths, which kind of puts you ahead of the rest if you're going in for STEM. Also, I would look at anti-bullying policy, because if say we're talking about boarding school, you're looking at giving away your child to another family, and you have to assess their values. And so they're being brought up in the kind of last 2 really formative years of their life, whether, what is the values of that boarding school? What are they churning their their students out and sending them into the world? What are those values that they're sending them out into the world with? Anti-bullying policies as well, how they deal with all the kind of devices, because if they don't deal with it, then also that's troubling. But also what I would encourage you as a first step would always be to log in to their virtual open days and have a look and talk to the staff. And then hopefully some of those open days also have students to ask the students questions, because in a normal circumstance, the best would be if you just go and visit. It makes such a difference with your child just to be in that environment and kind of absorb what that institution is about and what it represents and its culture. And, if the students are friendly, are they all, giving out this sort of vibe that it's one of those environments which are good. So I feel like that's the best, but obviously we can't do that now. The second best would be just sign up for all their virtual open days and ask all the questions you can.
So then, Tamara, if you don't mind me asking you another question, how do you then prepare for a child's overseas education? Like, what are the kind of steps that a parent here needs to take, if they have an overseas education in mind for their children?
I suppose first would be take care of the finances, like we've mentioned before, and just get ready. It's not going to be as affordable as keeping them here. But the other thing is English is paramount. I think our level in Malaysia, if you don't mind if I could just generalize, it's subpar. So just to sign up for more English enrichment classes if you believe your school is not providing enough support, or switch to an international curriculum at some point. It could be the last 2 years. It could be right at the start. It's fine if you don't, because you can always there's plenty of options to supplement English. And also, I suppose, come and see PrepWorks because there's other kind of skills that I feel Malaysians might be, or I guess I'm really generalizing here. Not everybody falls in this category, but it's just the general kind of critical reading and writing, thinking, questioning, asking the right questions, communication, current affairs, expressing yourself, so communication skills. So that's the sort of things that we focus on in the younger years before the kind of the crunch starts when they apply. And just to know also that grades do still matter, especially if you're going to the British system.
Good to note. So based on that and based on the feedback that we've received from our IG questions, we would like to share some of the concerns that the parents have for sending their children abroad at this point of time. And I think one we've spoken about at length, which was safety. The next one is value for money if classes are still online. And I think that's a very relevant question, because you're still paying quite a big chunk of the tuition fees for college and things like that. But then if all the classes are just going to be online anyway, and your son or your daughter is stuck in their bedroom, is it still value for money? And then COVID concerns such as getting infected or getting stuck at a certain place where the lockdown rules are different from it is here and the situation being so fluid, like, as it is nowadays, as well as the lack of social interaction due to social distancing. James, bearing all this in mind, if you had to send your children abroad at this time, would this be the concerns that you would share, and would this affect your decision?
I think letting them stay here has the same level of problems, if not more. Rightly pointed out by Tamara, right? I think some of the SOPs in our school and also the public space now, even in my own personal opinion, the recent opening up of restaurants and dining, I think it's just too early. But then again, I understand why that's required. So I say, send my kids overseas. I think that's still a better option. Let them sink or swim. Make their own mistakes and pray that none of them tells me they're pregnant before finishing school. That's all I can hope for.
All right, nice to know. Yes, that is a very present, and I think it must keep you up at night having two daughters as they're growing older. How about you, Mariam? Do you share James' concerns? And if not, what are some of your own concerns with regards to this?
Maybe I should just add it, just make sure that they are not fathers before they finish their education, because I haven't got a daughter. Same concern, James. Yeah, I guess if this was last year, then maybe I would defer it a year later or a semester. But this is now. If it's time for him or any of my children to start a new semester or a new year in their school, boarding or uni, if it's time to go, I think I will let them. They have to learn.
Yeah, I guess so.
They have to learn to adapt. Yeah, one of the reasons why we were planning to send the eldest at the time, a few years ago, is for him to be more independent. Yeah, one of the criteria and one of the reasons why we want to send is to build up his confidence and everything. So now, if you ask me, I will just still send.
Okay. How about you, Renee? Your daughter is 14 and she's studying here?
Actually, this is a timely conversation. She was here actually at an international school, but we've actually decided now is the time for her to go to boarding school. We're just moving that decision. We're moving through that decision right now. So it's amazing that this conversation is taking place right now, for a couple of reasons, right? So with me being here as an expat, she's had two sets of friends leave the school she was in already. Online was something she really was not thriving in. And she had been asking to go to boarding school for quite some time. So she'd like to finish high school in just one place. And so, this is very relevant. I think, it's hard to think about her being so far away from me, because I can't, just walk into her room as I used to. But like Miriam was saying, I think, I'm very proud of her for having the confidence of knowing what it is she wants to do, and being able to speak up for herself and ask. So it's happening now.
Oh, wow. So this is unfolding in your real life as we speak, all these concerns and all this. I hope you I hope James pray that none of them tells me they're pregnant before finishing school. Hope that doesn't scare you. But I'm sure that's a concern for all.
Just send them to an all-girls boarding school. That's fine. You'll be fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh God, there are always ways. I looked into that. The boys' school is never far away.
But with
a lot of thought into this. Yeah.
I think with that and everything, you just have to teach them to make the best decisions, right? And that's the best we can do.
Yeah, and do a lot of praying on this end. Okay. We've asked our audiences as well what they would like to know about the financial preparation that's required before their child leaves the country. So one of the questions that always get asked is, how much in advance do I have to save for their time abroad? And what amount is enough to secure a good education, support their lives abroad and things like that? And then there are a few other things that they've asked quite a bit. There's like, are there any hidden costs that parents should be aware of? And so since you were going through this process yourself, I figured you'll be the best person to answer all these questions.
Well, thank you. I think first, in terms of when to start, I think start as soon as you possibly can, right? As we've been talking about throughout this conversation, if these are your plans, start saving for your kids as early as possible. I would say it depends upon where they're going. So, Australia, UK, US, it can range really between location and as well, it can range between the school that you choose, maybe sometimes between 500,000 to 1.5 million ringgit overall. So it's not a small thing to save for. Apart from tuition, you got to think through accommodation. What's the right accommodation for your child to thrive in? Would it be, say, on-campus housing? Would it be, if it's boarding school, sometimes they can have a host for a family host, Transportation. So transportation, not just cost right now, it's also something to navigate through with the different requirements of each country in COVID. But there's airplanes and trains, and how does your kid even make it from landing, say, if they go to London to the school, making sure that there's an option for them that's safe. You've got mobile phone, internet, that costs money. There's also maybe some costs around supplies, just even making sure you have the right size sheets for the bed, because things can differ country to country. Help and costs around that. Food, any kind of groceries, extra funds for emergencies, and also fun, right? There are trips that some schools take, or different weekend events at boarding schools where they're going to explore arts and culture and nature. So being able to make sure that you can cover all of that, I think is the goal.
That's a very long and extensive list. Yep, you definitely have to be prepared to cover all of that. Tamara, would you like to chime in?
I think visa will be a little bit as well. So that's that. Yes, accommodation costs are kind of a big chunk. Makes a big difference between being in a city like London and being outside London. It can vary as much as like 50%. So I think that's also something just to bear in mind. And even then, when you choose university as well, if say you are working on a budget, then outside London, there's plenty of incredibly good universities. Which can generally have a lower cost of living for your child. So that's something to bear in mind. I think, there are also a lot of scholarships. So that's also something that you could look at. Like Warwick University offers a lot of scholarships for undergraduates. It's called the Global Excellence Scholar. So, available for any degree. So also just to look at those buckets of, funding. And then also another thing that might in a way disrupt your planning, but for a good reason, is in the US, you can even get scholarships in second and third year. You don't necessarily have to secure it in your first year. So once you're actually there, your foot's in the door, there's also other options looking forward as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Know that. Renee, how does HSBC Premier help parents to prepare for their child's overseas education from home to abroad?
Okay. Thank you for asking. So HSBC Premier, it's a suite of exclusive services and benefits that's offered to the whole family, so the parent and the children. We offer complimentary consultations with PrepWorks, and that service begins before the child goes abroad. So the PrepWorks, the admission and the experts for top boarding schools in the US and in the UK. We can do pre-arrival account opening. So I was mentioning before, the physical distance not being able to kind of be right there. If you need to get money to your child right away, and say for an unforeseen expense, it can be something that you can feel more comfortable with if an account is open for them in the location to where they're going. And then we also have something called Global View and Global Transfer. So I essentially can transfer money to my daughter in just 6 seconds with preferential foreign exchange rates.
Okay.
There's also simplicity and ease around free ATM withdrawals. So once your child is overseas, they get to enjoy those same Premier privileges, and also the worldwide recognition, really. So the privileges carry worldwide.
So I'm sure parents who are intending to send their kids overseas will find all these services really helpful. But also, what are the financial preparations that the parents should make in order to sustain their children's education abroad? Because a lot of it is saving up to get them there and then to sustain their education abroad. What are the financial preparations that a parents should make? And are there any tools that can help the parents, I don't know, maybe track their children's finances, make sure they haven't maxed out on their cards and their allowances, So are there anything that HSBC can help in this respect?
So I think even before we get to HSBC, we have talked throughout the conversation about the importance of a plan. So have a plan, right? And think through the different costs and try to make sure that your plan covers those costs, and that you choose a location in a school that is within, the reach of you and your family. When it comes to how HSBC can help, with HSBC Premier, there is a dedicated relationship manager, and they have access to a network of wealth specialists who can provide assistance on growing, establishing, and maintaining wealth portfolios, and can help you come up with a plan so that you're making decisions that are within the goals, both say short-term and long-term. And then there's also financial solutions like education loans if they're needed, right? So with Premier, we do have exclusive rates, and sometimes they might be more advantageous to families who would like to not liquidate portfolios, and they can go ahead and take a loan instead. And then I mentioned the convenience and reach of HSBC Premier and the instant transfer with zero fee for funds overseas, and real-time foreign exchange rates that are preferential for Premier customers. So I think the international reach of HSBC is very, very strong, and it can support parents in this planning, and also while the children are away at school.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, guys, I've had such a good time chatting with all of you, but we're coming towards the end of our session now, and I've learned a lot today. But before we say goodbye, could we just get a short tip from each of you for parents who would like to achieve a good education for their children? So we'll go around the circle, and let's start with James.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I a lot of good points shared today. So thank you, everyone. I'm learning as well, and I'm sure that all parents we're always learning from each other, right? But one thing which I think I gotta say is that in this segment, I guess in the Tatler kind of demographic, we were very blessed. And one thing which I always try to instill in my kids is that you're not going to inherit anything. You're going to earn your own way in life, and I think that's something which I think I strongly encourage most parents to force it into the mindset, keep them hungry. I've met so many successful people who never attended private schools or even finished school, and vice versa. I've met many average or even below average performers who graduated from the most prestigious schools. So one thing that I'd just like to convey as the last point is to always keep the kids hungry, and don't let them think that they always have a safety net financially.
Okay. Well, yep, that's good advice for parents and for children. It's a bit scary for the kids. A bit of a warning for the kids, I guess. How about you, Mariam?
I agree with James, like keep them hungry, but in a way where, how do I put it? I want them to learn that nothing comes easy. It's not going to be served to them on a silver platter, They have to work hard for it, right? And in that sense, working hard, diligent, resilient, and then all this, something I think that education is there to support, but it comes a lot from parents and teachings at home. Yeah. So to me, it's still a learning process with me I can't really give you a big tip of what is happening because my boys are going to different stages of their life now, and I'm still learning on how to cope with teenage angst, teenager going into adulthood. It's still a learning process for me.
Yep, I guess we're all still learning every day as parents.
With this talk, I did get some insights from Renee, from Tamara, from James as well. So it's good. I'm really glad that I'm on this talk today. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's good to know. So Renee, any tips on for parents who would like to ensure that the kids get a great education?
Any tips? I think I'm still learning too. Parenting didn't come with a guidebook for me. But I would say that understand what your children want, understand what you have as goals for your kids. Start early, talk openly, and let them as much as they can make their own decisions. Like it's remarkable to think about Miriam's reflection with her family and mine with my daughter, two different outcomes, right? So whatever's best for them is, I think, where we need to land.
Yep, that's so true. Nice. Tamara, any parting words from you?
I think pretty much everything's been said, and I feel like this talk has covered a lot of areas, which I didn't expect actually in a good way. It's very holistic in that sense. I wanted to say that kind of chasing. I know it's a little bit contrary to what I've been saying, but kind of chasing results and attendance and all that, in a way, prestige and, it's all kind of extrinsic motivation. And we're trying to get our kids to kind of follow that dangling carrot. But what I want to challenge parents to do is help their kids with their intrinsic motivation, because I feel like that will bring them further in the future. And what that is really what drives them. And if maybe since there is this time where we're all kind of stuck at home and we haven't very much in terms of being able to be in a way distracted and going places and experiencing holidays together and all that. I feel like you can spend some time sort of getting to know your child, helping them to find what really drives them. Is there a cause that is close to their heart? Maybe even getting them to help out and helping them realize that there's a huge kind of joy in giving rather than just receiving, and then you're feeling like you haven't received much right now, so you feel quite empty. So I feel like we could sort of teach them that and expose them to that in any way possible. And then the other thing is also, since we have time, just to kind of think more deeply and prepare for what is to come. So, taking the time to just plan things, and definitely preparation, I would say as a general, will increase their chances of having the future they want, probably 4 times as much as if you didn't plan. So financially, educationally, everything. Yeah.
Yep. So if I'm hearing you right, plan, prep. But yeah, interesting notes. So on that note, I would like to say thank you to everyone. Thank you so much. I had a really eye-opening time with all of you. And I hope you guys have had fun. I hope I didn't take too much of your time. Thank you everyone for joining today's Tatler Talk, and I hope you'll have a good week ahead of you. Thank you, James. Renee, Tamara, and Mariam. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure.
Thanks, Sheeta.
Thank
Yeah.
you.